Jackson. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I can't help but notice that you're wearing a t-shirt. I don't think I've ever seen you wear a t-shirt before.
Really? Oh. So, yeah, I am wearing a t-shirt. This is actually the AFSP Out of the Darkness Hope Walks Here t-shirt.
Oh, yeah.
And so I thought I would wear it in honor of May's Mental Health Month. And that's what we do for a living, and that's what we promote. And so I thought I would wear my t-shirt in order to promote that, because there's so many resources that are available for promoting good mental health and mental wellness.
I didn't even know May was Mental Health Month.
Oh, you didn't?
I've been practicing as a therapist for how long? And I didn't even know that. So.
Okay. Well, so for this point and forevermore, you'll know that.
Yeah.
And in case you want to put it in your data banks, September is Suicide Prevention Month.
Okay. At least those both start with an S. So it's like September suicide. That's easier to remember.
Well, May, mental health. M.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm never forgetting it anymore.
So let's talk about mental health, just in terms of, you've known me long enough, in terms of both personal and professional. So from the professional aspect, like, how do you talk to clients, friends, family about mental health?
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, because when you become a therapist, people in your family start asking you questions and talking to you about things that they didn't before. Like, oh, hey, I've been experiencing this, or I have a friend who said this. Is that accurate? Is that right? And these questions start coming your way. So I've had to figure out a way to talk about mental health in a way that's natural. And I think the way that I like to approach it is I like to dispel the sort of mind-body disconnect that a lot of us really believe in modern society, which is like, well, I have my body, and completely separate from that, with no connection whatsoever, is my mind, over here off in some corner. And so if there's a problem with my body, well, that's a health issue.
Yes.
Yes. And if there's a problem with my mind, that is an issue like of my character. There's something odd about the way I'm thinking, and I need to like work on that in some abstract way. So the way I introduce it is, to me as a professional, when I talk about mental health, I say, so we understand that you need to do healthy things, even sometimes that you don't want to do, in order to take care of your body. Well, your mind is actually not disconnected from your body. Your mind, physical space is in your brain, and your brain is actually a body part. So mental health is an extremely important aspect of health, no different than physical health, and the exact same types of habits, reasons, feelings, and emotions that you have towards physical health, mental health is just another piece of it. It's almost strange to call them something different.
Right. Well, and that goes along with what I tell folks all the time, and believe personally that mental health issues are health issues.
Yeah.
And we just have to attend to them. And as you said, this is our body. This is the vehicle that carries us through life.
Yes.
And oftentimes, I tell folks, I go, oftentimes you take better care of your car than your body.
Yeah.
I'll ask people, so when was the last physical you had? But compared to when was the last time you took your car in for an oil change or to fill it with gas, right? I mean, we have to do that. And we do know that health and mental health are so intertwined and interlaced and really synonymous. Like, to care for one is to care for the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the future of the way that we have these kind of conversations, is maybe in the future physical health and mental health kind of collapse, and we just call one thing health. Someone walks in and they say, I'm really sorry I couldn't make it to work today. I had the flu. And it was really horrible. And another person walks in and they say, hey, I'm really sorry I couldn't make it to work today. Someone I love passed away. And we treat those with the same type of reverence and the same type of emotions. And maybe we don't draw a distinction between those things.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the future.
Yeah. Like, I'm just having a health condition.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times folks are like, well, how do I tell somebody that, I'm having a depressive episode or I need to take time off work? I go, tell them you're taking time off work for a health condition. And you're not obligated to divulge that,
Yeah.
One thing, though, as you said, this would be what we could hope for in the future. I do believe that the pandemic has served our profession well. Because, which sounds...
That's an understatement.
Well, yeah, in one regard. Number one, for those of us who have watched MASH, and Rado R. Riley used to say, incoming wounded, that's what it was like, just being inundated with folks and clients who just desperately needed help. But it really validated that mental health is a real thing, because clients who had always struggled more. But the point of validation came when people who had never struggled began to struggle. And that was this is a real thing, and we have to do better, and we have to attend, and workplaces took note, and we just have to do better.
Yeah. Sometimes, we're really, really stubborn as human beings. Until we get direct and immediate consequences, we don't change our behavior.
Right.
That's one of the things I've learned as a professional. And so you're right. The pandemic, it took mental health from being an abstract thing to a physical thing that was manifesting that you could not deny. It was right there in front of your face.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it'll change you when you have that experience, especially if you've never had it before.
Yeah. Well, and because we went through this, it was on a community level, on a state level, on a national level, on an international level. Right? It was a communal experience. We all were trying to figure out a way forward, because we didn't have the benefit of those who had lived through the pandemic 100 years ago to coach us, to guide us, to mentor us, which is what we're used to. Like when we need to figure something out, we ask somebody who's been through it before.
Yeah.
And, short of somebody being maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years old when the last pandemic occurred, nobody's around to be able to say that, to share that.
Yeah. So, I kind of think of what we do as awareness, like the importance of this work, to keep going with the health metaphor, is that it kind of acts like an inoculation. Because I think when people were introduced suddenly, like introducing your face to the pavement, they were introduced so suddenly to mental health, it was almost traumatic for them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it was traumatic almost on a societal level. And so when we work on awareness, what we do is we kind of create an inoculation, like a vaccine almost, against that sort of trauma, so that people have the tools to be able to handle the things that'll come up.
Yeah.
Because mental health is real. And if you've had the privilege of not having to face that in your life, and like not believing that's true, consider yourself very lucky.
Yes. Yeah. And wait for it, because it'll likely happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yet.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Big asterisk.
Yes. I was actually just talking with a couple the other day who were struggling. They had a young adult child who had been hospitalized, and the mom was saying, because they had also lost a child to suicide. And so they were saying, she was saying, what did I do wrong? And I said, would you ever ask that if you had a child who had lost their life through cancer, and then this child got diagnosed with cancer? Would you ever lay that level of guilt or responsibility on yourself as if you did something wrong? And so, again, just re-emphasizing, mental health issues are health issues, and they manifest as such.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe part of the reason to do that, there's all these guilt and shame around how to handle mental health issues, because people just don't know. And when you don't understand something, a lot of times you will take responsibility for things that you shouldn't take responsibility for. You'll have reactions that aren't actually in line with what's going on just because you don't know better. And in the world of mental health, so many of us are kids. We don't really know much about it. We have vague ideas about concepts, but luckily, for better or for worse, it hasn't been something we've been faced with, forced to learn. But it will happen. And so now is better than later.
Yes. Well, and the resources that are available are vast. And so, I'm oftentimes known as the resource queen.
Yeah.
So AFSP is one of those resources that's very beneficial. They have a bunch of programs, and you, as also a trainer of many programs, going into high schools and middle schools for It's Real for mental health. Talk Saves Lives. They have a lot of resources for survivors of suicide loss, navigating, the trauma of that. Out of the Darkness Walks are one of the ways that we bring survivors of suicide loss together. We do campus walks in the spring. We do community walks in the fall across the United States. So I find, too, that when any struggle is laid upon you, whether it's suicide, whether it's death, whether it's an illness, there's a group or a community waiting. And so I am always encouraging people to get involved in the organizations so that they can have that support, because the mental toll that it takes when pain is a solitary experience can be very taxing, very exhausting, and also can leave people despairing.
Yeah.
They lose hope.
Absolutely. And I think, just seeing what happens when someone tries to take something on alone, it'll feed your intuition that we're not meant to do this alone.
Yes. Right.
And one of the things I've really loved about working with AFSP actually is going into high schools and doing talks for kids. Because I remember when I was in high school, which wasn't that long ago, actually.
Right. 11
years ago.
Right.
I'm going to date myself. But
we know you're young.
Yeah. I'm young.
Yeah.
We won't have to count years. So.
Okay.
So when I went in, I remember back when I was in high school, we had these mental health talks and people had no idea what they were talking about. They would ask a question, no one in class would raise their hand. They'd ask a question like, so what is depression really? What does it look like? They'd ask things people have no idea. But I go in recently with the younger generation and I ask questions and everyone knows the answers.
Yeah.
It's been really amazing to see. And even the kid in the back of class who looks like he's not paying attention, sometimes when you ask him what he thinks, he will have the best, most thorough answer of anyone else. And my favorite part is watching the kids realize that each other knows what they're going through. And it's almost a healing experience just to have a reminder that, hey, even if you don't have a lot of friends, even if you're struggling at school, you're all kind of in this together. Yeah. And I see that happen naturally. It's not forced at all. So that gives me a lot of hope that what we're doing is actually having an impact.
Yes.
Not theoretical, but it's real. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah, and people are talking about it much more openly. I remember, number one, when I grew up, when I was a teen, I cannot remember, I don't know of anyone in my sphere who was seeing a therapist. And I sought out therapy when I was 19. And that was, just dealing with my mother's, she was a recovering alcoholic, but also really struggled with depression and anxiety. And so she, in some ways, she was my complaint. She was my problem.
Right.
But I didn't share that openly with people. And now, anytime you talk with somebody, or if I mention, they're like, hey, what do you do? I go, oh, I'm a mental health therapist. They're like, oh, I love my therapist. You know, John Green, I don't know if I told you this or if I've said this before. I was at a book signing with John Green, and I made mention that one of my gifted teens had recommended that I read his book. And I said, because she told me I would get it. And I said, I'm a mental health therapist. And he looked up in front of like God and everyone where this line was. And he said, I love my therapist. It was like, fabulous. If John Green is proclaiming it. But more people will do that. And even out in the open, more people are talking about, oh yeah, I'm on this medication, I'm on this medication. So I do believe the younger generation is helping us of the older generation reduce the stigma and talk more openly about it.
Yeah, and it's really easy to be cynical when you see people on TikTok say, there's this whole narcissist, and like everyone I know is a narcissist, and my boyfriend is a narcissist, and all this stuff. There have been side effects of increasing awareness of mental health, and I don't want to downplay that. Like when you see that kind of stuff, you see people misusing psychological language. It's a little disconcerting, that's true, but that's part of the stepping stone to learning how to use it properly.
Correct.
And for folks who are older, I know I've had conversation with my parents and my grandparents, and they can kind of have a cynical attitude too. They say, oh, well, kids nowadays, they're way too sensitive, way all stuff. We didn't have to deal with that stuff. We just sucked it up and things like that. Comparing mental health to physical health, though, they were also less prone to see their medical doctors.
Absolutely.
And you see the exact same pattern play out, which is that they have an issue that would have been small if they went to see their doctor. They say, no, I'm not going to do it. No, I'm not going to do it. And the consequences are massive. Mm-hmm. And so when I see that pattern play out, I go, you guys think that you're stronger because you don't go, but that's as silly as saying, well, I'm tough because I have a problem with my knee and I don't go see someone about it.
Yeah.
I'm tough because I deal with the pain.
Right.
It's like, there are side effects to doing it a different way, but I think it might actually be better because people are getting the help that they need.
I agree. And then can reduce the long-term effects.
Yes.
And can increase physical longevity and also just a sense of thriving in the world rather than just either existing or surviving in the world.
Yeah.
Because I think, my parents were, post-depression era kids. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm on the tail end of the baby boomers. And in some ways it was kind of suck it up and, spit on your hand and rub some dirt on it.
Yeah, and fair enough. Like, survival and just existing was impressive back then. So, I'm not going to say that the bar was lower, but circumstances were very different back then.
Yes.
And that was something to be proud of.
Yeah.
So without minimizing that, also, things are different now. Yeah. And we need more tools.
Right. So another organization that does a fabulous job in dealing with mental health is NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. Mm-hmm. And they actually have support groups for individuals who are struggling with mental health issues. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times when people first thought about NAMI, they thought it was, they were thinking about people with severe mental illness or chronic mental illness. But, it runs the whole span and the whole gamut in terms of anxiety, depression, OCD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, personality disorders, what have you. So they have both in-person and online groups across the United States. You can find that resource, find your local chapter and get involved. And again, I really encourage people, get to those meetings, get support, especially those people who are emotionally and socially isolated.
Yeah.
So that they can go, oh, it's not just me that has this thought, that feels this way, that can't get out of bed for a month.
Yeah. Is NAMI free?
Oh, it is. Yes. And so is AFSP.
Yes.
Yes. Just like I always say that NAMI is really like AA for mental health. And those support groups, other than if you're going to do a virtual support group and you have to register to get the Zoom link, you can just show up. Nobody's, just like in an AA meetings, nobody's like taking attendance or anything like that, but it's a way to get connected.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that, because we in the field, sometimes we forget, because we take it for granted, we interact with mental health every day, how amazing and healing it can be to just have a reminder that you're not alone. Yeah, we know that because we work with people every single day. Right. We're not going to forget that we're not alone.
Right.
But it's really easy especially when mental health struggles. I think the thing that's most unique is someone's depression is very different than another person's. Mm-hmm. And that sort of exists with medical conditions too, like the flu. But everyone kind of knows what the flu is. And your experience of the flu is more or less similar. But there's so much variation and diversity within the experience of an illness that even when people talk about it, you really can feel like you're alone. Mm-hmm. So having a group like that, where you can flesh out, well, not only do I have depression, but this is the way it shows up in my life. Mm-hmm. This is how it affects the people around me. Yes. Then you can start to see, oh, even though there is a lot of diversity, that person is not experiencing things like in a vague way. Like I felt it when they said that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The details and the content of life may be vastly different, but the emotion, the weight of it all, the frustration, the overwhelm, the despair, the hopelessness, the cynicism, and on and on and on. They hear that in other people's stories.
Yeah, and when you're talking with a group of people, something really kind of amazing happens, which is at the same time that the person's experience is very particular, it almost bridges that gap between what's particular and what's universal. And you share an experience together. And that's not something that you can replicate by watching videos alone in a room.
Yeah.
So there's really no replacement for getting involved.
True. Absolutely true. Okay, so here's a personal question. Because, I always want to attend to professional as well as personal.
Yeah.
So the personal question is, for you, especially in May's Mental Health Month, when you are struggling, what do you do? What helps your mental health? And what allows you to keep doing what you do? Because, I've said this to many of my interns and those that I supervise in the field. The hardest thing I think about doing our job is when the weight, if you will, of the cross is heaviest on our shoulders, when we're dealing with our own shit, if you will, excuse my expression. So,
you just say shit and then you're like, if you will.
Keeping it real, So what do you do to take care of yourself when things are heavy?
When I was younger, I had a really shallow understanding of coping skills. It's like, when things are tough, I will listen to music. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if that helps you, that's really, really good. Or I'll, go for a run. I'll do things like that. But as I get older, I realized that those things didn't help me nearly as much as investing time and attention into my relationships. Especially, I think when you're younger, when you're a teenager, maybe it's just a guy thing, but you think, I can do all this on my own. I want to be independent. I can take care of things. If things are rough, I can weather them out. If I just listen to enough music, I'll be okay. I don't have to talk to anyone. I don't have to do things like that. But what I've learned is having one conversation with my sister, with my wife, with my family, taking the time to call my father on the phone, or even just getting involved with my church, someone I don't usually talk to that I see around, someone at the bus stop, and just investing a little bit of time and attention to them, saying, hey, how are you? When I'm feeling bad, when I feel like there's too much weight off my shoulders, it's an amazing experience. The other person, without trying, will lift it off of you. That's what I've seen. I've really learned that there's nothing more important, at least to me in my life, than my relationships. And so I strengthen my relationships. I put time into my relationships and other people in my life who love me, keep me sane. It's not me.
I think that's tremendous wisdom. Sister Connie, my spiritual director, would always say, when we share our burdens with others, they're halved because we've now allowed somebody else to carry it with us. So it's not so heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it scales, which is why I think groups are so amazing.
Yeah.
When you can have your burden 12 times, that's way smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. And from a spiritual perspective, and, you and I both are spiritual and religious in faith, biblically, when Christ was carrying his cross, they pulled in Simon to help him. Like, and even though he fell, he had help. He had somebody relieving that weight for a small amount of time. We can't fix it, for other people. But I find that very profound, and I think it's important, when you said that we find those Simons in our lives. We reach out to them. We ask them of, for what you need.
Yeah.
And also watch for when they show up. Because it can be, some people still go, no, I don't need help. I can do this on my own. So I think that's important.
I think it's so important. I think that story is so beautiful. It reminded me of another quick one from the Bible. When Moses parts the Red Sea, right? In order to keep the waves up and the sea parted, he has to lift his arms. And he actually stands with his arms lifted so long, for such a long period of time, that he can't do it anymore. He physically can't do it anymore. And so he has someone hold each of his arms up for him.
Yes.
So he was the prophet, he was the leader, just like we're the prophet and the leader in our own life, right? Following God, figuring out our journeys. He needed not one, but two people on each side to bear him up. And that's a beautiful lesson to me. Sometimes we fall into a trap of having one really, really close relationship whether it's a romantic relationship or otherwise, and we can fall into a sort of dependency on one person. And I think the beauty of sharing your burdens with others is that no matter who you talk to, they can lift your burdens.
Yeah.
And so finding multiple people around to bear you up, sometimes that's the only way you can make it through.
Yeah, I think that is such a beautiful reminder. In my own life, there are 6 of us who are all therapists and counselors, and we have navigated decades of journey with each other, and they have personally sustained me through my heavy crosses and likewise. And so yeah, I wouldn't want to go through life without them.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for us, especially in the modern age where everything's very convenient. We don't have to get up on the couch. We don't have to physically interact with people to live our daily lives anymore. You can really structure your whole life where you never have to see anybody. And we might say, oh, well, you know, I'm healthy because I at least have a good relationship with my wife or my girlfriend, or I have a good relationship with my mom. But you need friends. It's a trap. You need friends too. Not only do you need family, you need friends, and you can't make it without them. It sounds cheesy, but it's true.
Well, and during the pandemic, the one thing, and definitely as an extrovert, the one thing that I was absolutely craving and other people were craving too is just to share airspace, the same airspace with people. And again, technology has really brought us the opportunity to stay connected in so many other ways. But I personally find that it is vital sometimes just to sit down and share airspace like we're doing today.
Yeah.
You know,
those moments are
gratifying
irreplaceable.
to me.
Yeah, because when you share a moment, once it's gone, it's gone. It can live on in your memory and things like that. But those moments are irreplaceable. You can't create another one that happened at the same time in the same place. So what you're making is something that, you know, you can't replace it. It's special. It's sacred.
Okay, so as we wrap up, it sounds like one of the biggest takeaways to remember, especially within May's Mental Health Month, is that you are not alone, and reaching out for help and being with others provides strength and support.
Absolutely, yeah. And when you reach out to someone else, it's not just a burden on that person. It's also an opportunity for them to step up and be there for you and to love you. And you don't want to rob people of opportunities to love someone else.
Right. It's truly an honor.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to sit with you.
As always, Christine.
Thank you. Until next time.